I'm a saxophonist, composer, arranger, producer based here in LA. I wanted to give a special thanks to Jack for inviting me to this little masterclass and question and answer. If you don't know me or if you want to know my music, you can check out my Instagram, Lorenzo Ferrero Music, check out my YouTube channel and my website. I've been working in Los Angeles for about 6 years and playing with great musicians, and I'm also the co-founder of the Afro-Peruvian Jazz Orchestra that got a Latin Grammy award last year for Best Arrangement. And I've been working on a lot of projects, and of course I've been spending quite a good amount of time doing and creating educational materials to everywhere, so that students and musicians can have access from anywhere in the world. And a lot of what I do is, ebooks. I have improvisation ebooks. I have courses, online courses, like my Mastering Melody course. And actually, I'm going to grab some of that information and give it to you today on this little chat that we're going to have. So yeah, basically what I wanted to do today on this little masterclass is kind of show you a little bit of the things that I've compiled that have made me a much better player, much faster, things that I teach to my students and things that I teach on my course, that if applied daily, weekly, they're just a booster of improvement, that you can get better a lot faster. I'm going to show you the way I deconstruct chords and the way little things that I do every day or every week, and that if you do that, you're actually gonna gain musical vocabulary a lot faster, because that's the whole thing for me. It's the idea of gaining musical vocabulary, which is something that after more than 10 years of teaching realized that is a big problem with many students, the lack of maybe rhythms or lack of phrases. Like, where do I get those phrases? Yeah, you can get them transcribing. That's great. I've done my share of transcriptions too. But let's be honest, not everybody has all the time to be transcribing. And even if you do transcribe, it's actually, it's not very good if you don't grab what you transcribe, analyze it, and use it in all sorts of contexts, if that makes sense. The problem if you just transcribe and memorize phrases is that you will only be able to use those on those contexts, right? And that's the way I learned at the beginning. But what I want to show you today is a way where you can deconstruct chords and grab awesome patterns and melodies and then instantly generate phrases a lot faster. Now, it does take time, but please ask any questions as I go through this method. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how I practice long tones and stuff like that to get a better sound, and the way I actually articulate which is something I learned from my dear mentor, George Garçon, many years ago. Because it's really important when you practice these chord exercises that I'm going to show you today, that I'm going to grab from my Mastering Melody course. It's really important for you to really articulate them properly, not just play them, right? Well, as you can see, using the Boston sax strap, which is awesome, and the Heritage neck, which I really love. So if you also have any questions about setup or something more saxophone specific, please send a message. I'm trying to read everything as it comes. All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about sound and articulation. I'm just gonna do this part quickly because I want to get to the chord parts. Well, what you heard there was actually There Will Never Be Another You, if you've heard or what I was playing at the beginning. And most of what I played or what I improvised was actually based on chords. And it was based on some of the stuff that I'm actually going to show you today. All right, cool. So talking about sound, it's really important that when you practice sound on the saxophone, you use absolutely no tongue. The tongue takes away, a lot of times we over-articulate and we overuse the tongue to initiate the sound, right? So the way to really practice long tones is to actually take away the tongue completely and play them really soft. It's almost like you're trying to find the note. You're gonna start from air and let that air go in slowly and softly until the note slowly shows up. And that's gonna be the softest you can possibly play. The idea with this is for you to kind of look at your sound with a microscope. It's like you're gonna try to get every single note of the saxophone in the softest possible volume that you can without tongue. And the idea with that is that you're actually gonna find your sound from the smallest, right, volume, and you're gonna try to make it thick and warm, even in a very soft volume. And as you do that, you can start, raising the volume a little bit. So sort of like this. I'm not going to do too much of that because it's boring, but you need to do that. And if you do that for at least 5 minutes, a couple of things will happen. You'll feel a lot of things happening on your embouchure because playing that soft actually requires more air, and your embouchure gets a little more tense. So for example, for me, I used to bite a lot, so when I do this exercise, I can feel me trying to bite, so I would try to get more air support and try to not bite, right? So I would do that, and you want to do that with a tuner and try to get that note as perfectly even as possible, meaning that also when you play that soft, one thing that happens a lot is the note disappears and appears again and shakes. So you're trying to avoid that, right? Avoid this. Try to get on all ranges, especially on those high notes that need that support. So as you do that, the idea with these long tones is that you see what's happening on your embouchure and kind of analyze yourself, because we all have different internal embouchures. So we all naturally are going to sound different. We all naturally require different setups, and that's something that I like to put a little point in, because I get so many questions about setup. Hey, what mouthpiece should I use? I like this. What, like a lot of the obsession with the setup. And honestly, we all have an internal embouchure that actually requires different things. In my case, I like big tip openings. This is a 9, my Sios signature 9 star. And I just play better on bigger tip openings, but some people hate bigger tip openings and they play on 5 or 6. So that's something to consider. Like when you play these soft long tones, you need to figure out what's happening on your embouchure, on here, on there. Like it's really a good sort of a meditation of sound. It's like you're gonna try to find out what's happening. And as you do it, if you do this 5 to 10 minutes a day, you're gonna start developing your sound really nicely. It's gonna get round, it's gonna get warm. I tell you, because it happened to me. And it also has a great advantage, which is you're not going to disturb anyone because it's really soft. As you keep doing those long tones, start adding more notes. So instead of one note, try to do intervals, and try to do, maybe play a little ballad in that volume, or at least very, very soft, sort of like this. Right, so by playing that soft, you need to you're gonna train for your sound not to get lost. With this long tones, the idea is that you actually will be able to play from soft to strong and back to soft, and not sacrifice any tension on your embouchure, and actually sound beautiful when you play soft. And this is something that I saw happening on many students, that when they play soft, their sound just falls apart, meaning that they're so used to just grab and do right, and actually that to me sounds good because I do the soft long tones. A lot of the times when you, well, to me this is what I saw happening, is when I did the soft long tones, everything else corrected itself. It's like now I play even if I play louder, it now sounds like it went to the gym, you know? I felt like my sound went to the gym because it's now a lot more accurate, a lot more in tune, and it just sounds stronger. And I was able to warm up my sound. And that was another reason why I jumped to a 9-star, because I was able to put more air into the mouthpiece. So if you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. Now I want to jump to the chord exercises that I'm going to show you. And basically what I want to show you today is 2 things that you can implement into your practice routine. Okay, one of them is called the 1 chord a week concept, and then the 1 pattern a week concept. 2 things that I teach my students, and that I also talk about in my courses. And I'm gonna jump onto that in a second. But first, let me quickly talk about articulation, or actually what I would say the no articulation concept, which is the same idea of not using the tongue to produce the sound. You need to also find at least 10 minutes, an additional 10 minutes, where everything else that you practice, you try to do it without tongue. Meaning that it's all gonna be like a giant slur. It's like if you're practicing long tones, but now you're just doing it with more notes, but no tongue. So it's just gonna be a big slur. So if you're practicing the chord exercises that I'm gonna show you, you put a metronome and you make sure that your quarter notes, and even better, your eighth notes, are as even as possible, right? Meaning that you're gonna focus on the distance between each beat. A lot of the times when we use the tongue to kind of like grab each beat, right? But what I need you to do, and what I would love for you to try out, let me grab a metronome here, is for you to have the time and the tempo in your fingers rather than on the tongue. And that's the problem with overusing the tongue, especially if you go to like 50 BPM, which is kind of where it's really good to practice. For this exercise, it doesn't really matter what you play. You can grab any exercise that you're doing, but the idea is that you use no tongue. You put a metronome around 45 or 50 BPM. I'm gonna do 50 right now. And then what you're gonna do is, instead of actually playing, you're gonna just finger whatever it is that you're gonna play. So let's say I'm gonna do something like this. Right? So I'm gonna put the metronome, and instead of playing, I'm gonna just grab my fingers, and I'm gonna make sure that what I'm playing is even before I even blow. Because when you start playing and then you put the tongue and this and that, it's like you're never actually practicing having a good tempo. Practicing with the metronome is not always good if you're doing it wrong. What I mean is that a lot of times you put the metronome and you just grab the next beat, and yes, you're in time, but you're uneven. So you need to practice evenness, not just time. Okay, how you practice evenness? You go to 50 or 45 BPM. Okay, you focus on 4 notes or 3 notes. Honestly, what you play won't matter because you can apply anything to this. It's just a way for you to use the metronome and put the tempo in your fingers, not anywhere else. The tempo, I feel like when we play and we don't train like this, it goes everywhere. Like, oh, maybe your tongue is helping you, and then your fingers kind of land on the right spot, but I don't know if you feel sometimes you're playing a phrase and it's shaky. Yes, you're in tempo and you're in the time, but it just doesn't sound that good. Why does, saxophonists like Michael Brecker, Joe Lovano, Garçon, why do they sound so good? Most of it is, if you really listen to them, it's the perfect evenness of their eighth notes. And this is something I learned from George Garçon. It's like insane when you practice like this and you put the tempo here, right here. So the way I like to do it, and I tell my students to do it, and this is something I see happening on them a lot. They might even have a good vocabulary and they have ideas, but when they play, it's kind of shaky because they're not even. Their phrases might not be even. So how do you do this? You put the metronome without even playing. I'm just gonna make sure that my fingerings are very even. So here's, I don't know if you can hear the metronome properly, but right there. So instead, I'm gonna do eighth notes, right? So I'm gonna make sure that if I do like that, I would even make the sound a little stronger from my fingers just to see, like there, I know I'm a little uneven. Okay, now I feel it's getting there. Now it got there. Once I feel my fingers are even, then I play, but not before. You're not gonna put your mouth on the saxophone until you do this. Like, that's the concept I like. Then when you feel that's even, then you can play. What ends up happening is two things. When you release the tongue, when you don't use the tongue, your fingers, it's like your fingers are naked. Like, they have to do the right tempo. So this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to show you in a bit how you can practice an entire jazz standard and a solo over a song and use absolutely no tongue. Just with a metronome, like sax a cappella and a metronome and no tongue. Why? Just at the beginning, then you put the tongue back, but then you'll realize that your tempo might actually be bad, because when you do without no tongue, it's like, oh, your fingers are all shaky, right? There might not be on the right evenness. That's what I want you to train. It's so much better when you start sounding even. It's like everything gets together. This goes along with the long tones for me. It's like I would do the long tones and then segue into this. Then you just put the metronome and just whatever you might be playing, if it's a chord, a pattern exercise, do it with a metronome with absolutely no tongue. And also, when you do it without tongue, the other amazing thing is that you're gonna see your sound getting fuller. The tongue a lot of the times cuts away. I wouldn't say half of our sound, but a good percentage of our sound gets cut away when you play a phrase and you put too much tongue on it. Like, for example, I'm gonna play something quickly with a lot of tongue, and then I'll play it again with minimal or no tongue. You're gonna see the difference. So I'm gonna use a lot of tongue, all right, right now. Right, I used a lot of tongue, and for me, it's like, I know it was unnecessary to use that amount of tongue. And some people would do it, and I would play like that before, but it's like, why am I using that amount of tongue? I basically tongued 70% of those notes, right? It's like, it doesn't even make sense. I felt my tempo was shaky, and I felt like my tongue was trying to grab everything. My fingers were not really even, but if I do it without tongue or minimal tongue, right? So I used a lot less tongue there, right? I didn't end up playing the same thing, sorry. I didn't remember what I played the first time, but like the same thing, for example. That's a lot of tongue, right? Now, minimal or no tongue. No tongue at all, right? Actually, I felt it was fuller and a little more even. That's what you would actually do. You would actually train your fingers to really be even, right? That's the whole point of that exercise, okay? So we're gonna be putting the metronome and understanding the space in between each beat to really be even. Do you guys have any questions? I'm not seeing many questions right now, but if you do, please let me know about sound and articulation. Those are two little things that you can do. Now let's jump into the chord stuff, which is really cool. Okay, so my whole concept and method is about deconstructing chords to extract melodies and to build phrases, hence expand your vocabulary and develop it as well. So finding a way where you can understand the chords and then grab the sounds that you like from them. Not the sounds that you transcribe, but the sounds that you personally like. Then what's going to happen, and it's so fun because I teach this to my students, and they all come up with different things, right? I show them how to deconstruct chords. I show them how to produce and create melodic cells and patterns, and then it's like I tell them, now you're going to pick your favorite cells or your favorite patterns out of these chords, and each student comes up with something different because we all have different taste. So what's going to happen is you're not only going to practice chords, right, and mechanize them on your fingers, because the whole idea is to automate the chords on your fingers so that when you look at a chord progression, you don't have to think about it, right? Your fingers just got it. So the whole concept with that is we're going to start by deconstructing one chord. I'm going to show you how you can break down just one chord, and that's going to take me to tell you about my 1 chord a week concept. Sounds little, but this is a long-term process. And then I'm going to show you also a short-term process of developing your vocabulary. It's going to end up being more authentic vocabulary. A lot of the times, don't you feel like you end up practicing a lot of stuff that you don't even like how it sounds, or that you know you probably won't use on your solo? That's the whole thing, you know? Like I felt like I spent so many years just practicing from books because it's what I had, and then I realized, I haven't really played that, you know? So the cool thing about this concept is it'll take you to develop your own personalized vocabulary. So even if somebody has better technique than you, they'll never sound how you're sounding because you've trained to actually develop your own vocabulary based on the sounds you like, based on what I'm going to teach you now. I'm just going to teach you the initial concept. Since I can't really share my screen right now, it's going to be a little tough. So I'm just going to go with the simple stuff. But I'm sure you'll understand it. I'm going to show you how you can practice first 1 chord a week. Deconstruct it, break it down, and focus on those 4 notes. Really understand the chord inversions, right? Chord tones. We're not going to do scales. Scales are not very musical. I think it's a mistake to start learning how to improvise with scales. They're great, but if you learn a scale to improvise for the first time, you're just going to sound like a scale. So the first thing that when this happened, this was a breakthrough when I understood that chord inversions were really the way to go, and that most of the phrases that I loved and transcribed were based on chord inversions. In fact, once you really deconstruct the chord inversions, you'll realize that most of the stuff you already heard and that you like from like either players or anything, you know, it's actually based on inversions with a little manipulations, right? So that's really good because it's what I want to show you now is not only for your practice and for you to get better and fluent at chords, build your vocabulary, but also you're going to unlock a lot of things that your ear is going to get trained, because now by playing inversions and listening to the inversions, your ear is going to get trained, right? So your fingers are going to automate the stuff, and then your ear is going to remember how, hey, that's the sound of first inversion, that's the sound of third inversion descending, etc., and all of that. All right, cool. So 1 chord a week. What does that mean? That means that it's not going to stay in 1 chord a week, but at least you can start that way, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with really practicing chords. You're going to grab, for example, C major 7. I like going down 5th, so it's like if I do C major 7 this week, I might do F major 7 next week, and I might do, keep going that way. I like to just start with major 7 chords because they're really musical, and you can ultimately end up using those. Everything you do once on 1 chord, let's say you start on C major 7, you deconstruct the hell out of it. Once you do that, you save your favorite deconstructions, which I call melodic cells, And then you don't have to do it all of that again for F or for all the others. You just grab your favorite sounds from C major 7 and you transpose those to the rest. So once you do the work on one chord, it becomes easier on the other chords. What's going to happen is I want you to, for a week, spend about 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's how I like to do it. Of only those 4 notes. You're going to practice and mechanize, automate all the inversions, right? So if I start with a C major 7, right, which is like this, root position. I'm going to make sure I can play all of its inversions, right? First. Second. Third. Okay, that's easy. But even if that sounds easy to you, most people, like most students, would make a mistake if I tell them play all the inversions. Oh, maybe one note goes wrong. So make sure that for that week, you're gaining a master's degree on C major 7. The first thing to do is all the inversions, ascending, also descending. Sax players sometimes make the mistake to practice things only on the ascending mode. So make sure whatever you do ascending, you also do descending, right? This is just going to stimulate phrases for you. Okay, so now I'm going to play inversions in not specific order, but I'm going to do ascending and descending. So first inversion, ascending. Descending would be. So I start from the top note, right? I would start from that C and then go C, B, right? So 1, 7, 5, 3. Ascending, 3, 5, 7, 1, right? Same with a second inversion, for example. Third inversion, ascending. Descending. Same thing on F, so just so you can hear how that sounds. That's already a little beautiful melodic fragment that I just grabbed from the chord tones. It was just an inversion, that's it. This is an easy way to practice your chord tones because you don't have to think about notes. I just think about whatever note I want to start with and then descend or ascend. You don't even have to think about the inversions. The inversions is just an initial way for you to get started on mechanizing the process of automating chords in your fingers. That's the whole point. So you can read any chord progression and your fingers will know what to go and you can actually think of more creative stuff than what's the next note I should play. All right, so that's the first step, is make sure that if after that week, you can test yourself. I play second inversion descending, third ascending, first descending, right? Make sure that, and on all ranges, because most of the time you'll get 2 ranges to do that. And on the saxophone, it's easy because it's the same fingerings in 2 octaves. And this is a lot harder to do in clarinet, for example. All right, cool. So the next thing I'm going to show you now is how you can deconstruct that. So once you got the inversions really well, how do you deconstruct a chord? Well, the first thing is 2 little things that I like to do. One is octave displacement, and the other one is change of order. So the octave displacement is literally the same thing, but you're gonna break the chord at some point, the octave. So if I do it in the middle, meaning I'm gonna do 2 notes in an octave, and then the other next 2 notes will be in the same order, but whatever, the octave lower or the octave above. So if this is root position, and I cut it in the middle, the order of the notes remained the same. The difference was that the second 2 notes were down an octave. So first inversion, how about, right? If I do that octave displacement in the middle, sounds beautiful. I did it in 3 keys there, right? On F and in B flat. So you can hear how that already sounds. It's just a little melody there. And sometimes when you do this little small adjustments to the inversions, they almost they stop sounding like a chord. Now it's a melody, right? Because within 1 major 7 chord you get a second, you can get a 6 if you split the octave, stuff like that. How about if I split it right after the first note. So I'm going to play the first note of each inversion here, and then I'm going to go down and play the other notes like this. So it's going to look like a tick. So first in root position, plain root position sounds like this, right? Now, if I play that C where it is, but then I go down and then up again, sounds like this. First inversion, instead of, which is plain first inversion, you play like this. Beautiful little, it already became a melodic cell. That's the concept of a melodic cell or melodic pattern, grabbing it from chords. You can make them more sophisticated and use non-chord tones like approach notes. It's not enough time today to talk about all of that, but which I do teach, and I teach on depth on my Mastering Melody course. But this is a good start. You can literally grab all of these beautiful melodic sounds using just the chord tones, right? And I'm going to show you how to apply that in a minute. Let me see. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. So and then you can also break the octave right at the end. So the inversions become a lot more musical, right? That's just splitting the octave, breaking the octave. So when you do for an entire week, 10 to 15 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, you're only going to spend time with those 4 notes and really kind of write it down. Like this is all like I would be sharing my screen and writing and telling you, hey, you need to write this down. Like spend 10, 15 minutes. If there is some sort of a hack that I could tell you that made me accelerate my improvement and made me better was the fact that I could write all my stuff. Like I would just sit down and spend half an hour, 20 minutes writing, and then what happens is when you play all the stuff, it's like you've already practiced it almost, right? So instead of spending 8 hours locked practicing the saxophone, I want you to give it a try to also spend some time writing your patterns, writing your cells, writing your phrases, right? And making sure that you're processing in the writing. And see. All right, cool. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, and then if you have any questions, and I see some requests here, so give me a couple of minutes first so I can finish talking about this concept. All right, so that was octave displacement. Now how about we change the order of the notes? So inversions, you know, we see them as numbers. Root position is 1, 3, 5, 7, right? So if I change the order, what I like here is a really cool melodic fragment. Change the order of the last 2 notes. So I'm gonna do 1, 3, 7, 5, right? It's gonna sound like this. Now what happens there, when you play a chord horizontally and you do this kind of stuff, you change the intervallic relationship. Now you see root position is usually made out of thirds. But right now, because I did that, I have a third, then a fifth, and then a third. So you change how it sounds, even though it's the same thing, right? And it's the same notes. Once you mechanize the inversions, it's easy to do because your fingers know what notes to play. You just have to either change octave or switch order. But apply every little thing to all the inversions. That's really good because that's going to really give you the ideas. And what I tell my students to do is, okay, change the order of the last 2 notes for all the inversions, right? So that's root position, first inversion, that's a really nice one, right? Second inversion, third. So it already sounds like little melodies, right? Really sounds like little melodies. And it's all chord tones. It's all inversions. I just manipulated one tiny order, which is the order of the last 2. Okay? Now, that's a really cool thing to do. Now then, the idea is that you grab your favorite sounds from all of that, right? And then you say, okay, I really like the first inversion with a change of order of the last 2 notes. So I love this one, for example. right? So then after, another exercise, so the 1 chord a week would be the long term. You're gonna do this every week. Next week, F major 7. Then you grab all your favorite sounds from C and you practice them on F. Then again, B flat major 7. If you want to do chromatically, that's fine. So, but let's say after a month, you'll have 4 chords. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, how much time have you probably lost, or I lost, not doing it, you know? Like a year goes by and you never do it. So if you really give a week for a chord, so that you don't ever have to think about those chord tones for that specific chord. That's the point. In a week, you'll accomplish that. That's the whole point. So after a month, you'll have 4 chords completely mechanized. And then what you do is what I'm going to show you in a little bit, which I developed something called the Matrix of Inversions, which you can grab any set of 4 chords and practice them with all their possibilities at the same time. If you just spend a couple of minutes writing those 4 chords, and you're going to write each chord on every inversion. So in the first system, you write root position. Second system, you write first inversion. Third system, you write every chord on second inversions, etc., until you get to third inversion. But before I do that, I want to show you now how you can, the other part of the exercise, which is the short-term process. We've talked about the long-term process, which is practicing 1 chord a week. Now, short-term process is practicing 1 cell a week. So from all of those cells you've practiced on C major, you're gonna pick one that you like. Let's say I pick this one. I'm gonna pick the one with first inversion, change order of the last 2. So I'm gonna pick this. And by the way, it's really important you write all of this. Right now, I know it's tough without me sharing my screen and all of that. But when you're practicing this, write down, oh, this is my favorite one. Okay, here it is, here it is. And then you're gonna have your like staple kind of inversions or melodic sounds. So let's say I really like that. The short-term process is to now, during that same week that you're doing C major 7, spend an additional 15 minutes, practice every day, practicing that 1 cell, but now on every key. Meaning, I'm gonna take that cell, and it's almost like I'm creating a circle of fifth exercise. The circle of fifths are great because they take you through every key. So you're gonna grab 1 cell that you really like, take some time to write it down in C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, all the way back, right? You're gonna practice that as a mechanization exercise. It means that for 1 week, on one side, you're practicing 1 chord a week for the long-term process, and on the other side, you're practicing 1 cell a week, which after a month, you'll have like 4 cells complete, 4 patterns, if you want to call them melodic patterns, completely mechanized on every key. That means that they're ready to be used and applied, okay? So let's say I pick that one, which is a change order. Right? I'm gonna now play it on every key. So I'm gonna go down the circle of fifth. That's it. That's, mechanizing that over a week. Try to get it as fast and accurate as you can. Realized I'm using my articulation stuff here. I'm not using any tongue. The reason I do that is to really get a perfect flow on all ranges. A perfect flow that's in tempo. I mean, right now I did a little rubato, but you get the point. It's just a perfect flow of the phrase. So, open for questions if you guys have any questions. Let me see, I see. All right. So, those are 2 nice things that you can practice. I always tell my students, think of short-term and long-term. Long-term is spend a week, an entire week with 1 chord. It's going to take a while, but you're going to thank me for it, because after a while, it's just like, you're not going to have to think about it. And of course, the other one, the short-term, practice 1 cell a week. So let's say this week I pick that one. The next week, I'm going to pick another one. I'm going to pick maybe, I like something like this, which is really nice. It's like skipping the second note of the chord and putting it at the end an octave higher, right? Let's say I like that one. Now you do that on the circle of fifth. So in a month, you're gonna be a master in 4 chords. You're gonna be a master in 4 melodic patterns that you like, that you created, you grabbed from chords, and that are going to be there instantly available for you to use on every key. So next time you see, let's say, a chord like C major 7, it's just an entire different world happening. It's not even in your head, in your fingers. Your fingers are ready to play a patterns that you've practiced, and they're ready to just go to any inversion and descent or ascent. Okay, that's a very traditional sound. It's it's just chord tones, of course. You might ask, oh, well, where can I get more complex? Well, start with chord tones, because really they're the meat and potatoes. Start with chord inversions. If you do that and then you start adding stuff to them, that's a lot better. But do it when you really just give some time. Actually, when I saw the benefit of doing this, led me to write one of my ebooks, which is called Studies in Chord Inversions, which is 7 solos that I wrote exclusively using chord inversion. So there's not a single passing tone on that book. And it was as an exercise. And for me to show my students, say, here's how you can, I know you're probably not going to just do a solo using chord tones, but here's how that would even sound. Like, that's actually really cool to see how you can really do so much with chords, right? If you're thinking about applying this to a tune, how can you do that? Start very simple. How about you grab any song you want? Let's say I've played There Will Never Be Another You. How about I pick that, and I'm going to do every single chord on first inversion. As simple as that. Nothing more complicated. That already is going to sound pretty cool. Look how that would sound. First, I'm going to do it in root position, which is kind of the obvious. It's not as musical, but just so that you get the point. Root position sounds like this. That's the first part of There Will Never Be Another You on root position. Now, I'm going to do the same thing in first inversion, and just listen how instantly it sounds so nice and musical. Basically, I'm starting on all the thirds, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm just bumping on my first inversion, so it'll take some time. You might want to write it down, but you want to get it to a point where, like me right now, I can do it because I have all of that mechanized, right? So listen how that sounds, all chords first inversion. The same exact chords, first inversion sounds already sounds nice. It's like, oh, nice and melodic. You can see how a lot of phrases can be built out of just an inversion, right? All right, so how about I grab one cell now? Now when I'm talking about applying it to a tune, I would not do this right away. I would wait until I get some chords down. Okay, so I would do the one chord a week. I would do the one pattern a week. And really get to a point where at least I feel comfortable, right? If you've never done this before and you're not comfortable with chords and you don't have them automated in your fingers, try for a month to do one chord a week. If you feel that you can do more, then do 2 chords a week. If you're moving fast, try to do 2 chords. Try to do C and F, C major 7, F major 7 on the same week. And you can even practice connecting them. But here's the magic about practicing inversions. You're going to naturally learn how to connect chords without thinking about it. Because when you have all the inversions automated, you'll play one and then you'll find the closest note from the next chord. And then you'll be able to move down and up with fluency. You won't even have to use the closest one necessarily. You can voice lead and just use, I'm going to jump from here, jump to there, jump to that, It's a good point for me to say that voice leading, it's really good, but you also need the expressiveness of jumping. And practicing chord inversions gives you both, because you're able to now do things like this. If I play C major 7 and F, I just went from one chord to the other, and you heard how I was connecting by just using inversion. I didn't even think about how to connect them. I just started playing C major 7 on certain inversion and then find the closest note on F, etc., and then continue my inversions that way, okay? But inversions will allow you as well to do these beautiful jumps that are expressive like this. So if I connect, you get the idea. So you can connect, but you can also jump. And I believe that the best sort of phrasing comes with both, right? When you're able to connect chords beautifully, but also jump, because if not, it becomes very predictable and linear. You want those little jumps. Chord inversions they're very generous. If you practice them, when I started taking the time to do that, it was a transformation process for me. And this was, if I can tell a little story of how this happened, I was at Berkeley and I had a substitute teacher one day, and she wanted to hear how I played, so she put a play along and a lead sheet with chords. I can't remember the song, but I was playing and I was just throwing all my licks in there to impress the teacher, right? Like all licks that I've memorized. And then she stopped me and of course recognized what I was doing, which was just, spitting licks that I memorized. And she said, can you go and try every chord on first inversion? And I was like, okay, I could try it. It sounds like something not too hard. But then she put the play along and I tried to do it in real time and I miserably failed because, you go right now and try to do any song and just put a play along or put a metronome and try to do every chord on first inversion. It's not that easy because we don't have that automated, but it should be. You should be able to play every chord. If you tell a piano player that, he probably will do it very fast and accurately because that's what pianists and guitarists study. They have to study inversions. But for some reason, on saxophone players, it's not a common thing to tell you to study inversions. It's more about scales and patterns and this and that. And I figured we actually should practice like piano players, but in a horizontal way, because we can't play one note at a time, but we should understand inversions. We really have to understand chord inversions and how to connect them, okay? So that for me was transformational. Since that day, I practiced the hell out of my chord inversions until I could get them really musical. And when I did that, something amazing happened, which is the word fluency. All of a sudden, I was playing chords and I was reading them and I felt free, right? That doesn't mean that, there's a lot of other things that I can show you how to transform the inversions into actually effective phrases. But just having the inversions themselves are already a giant step to chord fluency and becoming, I'd say, harmonic fluent, but it's also melodically fluent because we are deconstructing chords in a way to gather melodies, melodic material, right? Where I'm showing you how to break down these chords in order to produce melodic cells, they become melodies. That's the whole point. The point is that you get the inversions out of the way because you need them, but then you actually practice all of these beautiful patterns that you construct doing this, what I've told you to do. And those patterns are inversions anyway. They're just manipulated in a way that sound more musical, right? And then you get more intervallic relationships between them, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to There Will Never Be Another You. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play, again, every chord on first inversion, but I'm going to apply one of the cells that I've showed you, which is changing the order of the last two notes, right? So if the first chord is F major 7, first inversion is like this. Now, first inversion with the change order of the last two notes, I'm going to do A, C, and then instead of E, I'm going to do F, E. So, really beautiful. Now, check this out and check how this sounds on every chord of that, like the first part of the tune. I'm going to play that tune. Hello, Argentina. I'm from Peru, so saludos. All right, so I'm gonna play that first inversion with that manipulation on the tune, and you're gonna see how instantly musical it already sounds, right? So. Wow. Already sounds great. Now it's a little boring, you know, it's extremely repetitive, but you need to do this little exercise to get fluency, not only on the chords. You need the chord inversions before, you need the 1 chord a week, but now at this point, I'm applying one cell. When I told you 1 cell on every key will allow you to do this, because if you do a few weeks and you do a different cells on different keys, you'll be able to do this. Okay, we got a question in how to play interesting solo over 1 chord. Do you have some ideas for patterns to not sound boring after a few bars? Yes. Well, here's the thing. That's a good thing about 1 chord a week. You inevitably sound boring at some point because you're only going to be playing 4 notes. Okay, so there's a lot more things you can do that there's not enough time today for me to show, like approach notes, right? Okay, now that you have all the chord inversions, let's say you have C major 7 completely done, you have all the inversions and patterns. Now the next step would be adding to them, right? Let's add some. Let's add the dressing of the salad. We're gonna add now chromatic approach. We're gonna add attention, right? Stuff like that. So hopefully that helps answering the question. 2 things, that's one of those. But the other thing is, which is really important, I have to really talk about this before I finish today, which is the importance of use of rhythms and rhythmic vocabulary. Okay, I'm gonna show you a quick technique, something you can do on a weekly basis as well, to enhance your rhythmic vocabulary. Okay, this is how you can sound a lot more interesting over 1 chord, right? That will answer the question. So I also seen a very big problem with many students when they're starting out. They might even get something like, yeah, they practice my inversions, so now how do I play them? Well, you need to now have a good rhythm vocabulary, because if you practice only the chords and you don't have rhythms, then you're just gonna sound like 8th notes, right? So, or whatever. So you need a good rhythmic repertoire. How to enhance a rhythmic repertoire? Or some students, they don't have the rhythmic repertoire, so it's like they play the phrase, but there's no good rhythm to it. So one thing I always tell my students is to have a rhythm notebook. That means that you're gonna grab a, whatever you use, a Sibelius, Finale, or even handwritten. You're gonna grab manuscript paper. I like to do this in Sibelius, and I'm just gonna write rhythms. So start with 1 measure, 4-note rhythm. What is a 4-note rhythm? Something like ba ba boo ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba ba. Those are like rhythms that contain 4 notes, right? Why? Because they seem to be very simple and also easy to internalize, right? In one side, your fingers are mechanizing the chords and your ears are getting trained, but you need on the other side to internalize rhythms. I did this slowly and slowly, so when you transcribe music, if you hear and listen music that you like, sometimes it's really good to just transcribe the rhythms, forget about the notes. Just write rhythms that you like. I encourage you to start like this. Write 8 measures, like 1 measure at a time, of 4-note rhythms. So here's how that would sound like. Ba 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 do ba 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 da ba 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 da ba, like stuff like that. I just did four measures there. All of those rhythms I sang, and you can sing them like that. They are 4 notes, right? Don't do more, don't do less. Just don't do those, like 8 measures of that. Internalize them, sing them. What's going to happen as you internalize your rhythm and you internalize your chord inversions? They're going to beautifully match. You're not going to even have to think about it too much. It's just going to happen. The problem is if you transcribe a phrase and you only learn it with its rhythm and with the notes, you can't really break it apart. What I'm showing you how to do here, or at least what I'm initially showing you how to do, is to practice everything separate. Give the time to your fingers to mechanize the chords. It's like you're training your fingers to really just mechanize it, so you don't have to think about it. Look at it as a training for your fingers, but as well for your ears, because as you play them, you're hearing the stuff. And then on the other side, you're just internalizing rhythms. In a way, you can sing them and accent those rhythms, right? So to get to a point where you can sing continuous rhythms, non-stop, flow of rhythmic ideas. So how you can play 1 chord a little more interesting is add different rhythms to it. So how about I go to C major 7, mess around with the inversions, but using a rhythms now. So intuitively it's gonna sound boring at some point because it's just the same notes. But you see how with the rhythm now, it's just, I have all those rhythms on my head. I don't have to think about them. I just, you know, I've taken my time to internalize them. And that's what I want you to do with rhythm. Rhythmic notebook, right? So what if I go back to There Will Never Be Another You? I'm gonna play that same pattern. Well, first inversion with the manipulation, but I'm gonna play with a rhythm. I'm just gonna do ba 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 boo ba. Two rhythms. Ba 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 do ba 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 ba. So one chord I'm gonna do it like that, and the other one like that. One measure, one measure. So. Now it's like it became music, at least for a little bit, right? I'm repeating a lot of the same stuff, but rhythm is what actually brings the music out. The chords are just all this information. The inversions is so that your fingers have all these melodies. But in order for them to become effective, nice phrases, you need the rhythms. It doesn't have to be complicated rhythms. That's why I say start with 4-note rhythms. Just have a bunch of them. And then go ahead and do 2-measure rhythms. Like you'll end up with a booklet filled up with rhythms that you're gonna slowly internalize. Hopefully that makes sense. If you asking about my mouthpiece, I use was my Sayo signature mouthpiece. Actually, they just developed this new material, which is pretty awesome, and that's what I'm using here. My Sayo signature is a 9-star. All right. Well, if you have any other questions. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about before I finish is how you can practice now 4 chords at a time. So let's say I've applied that on an entire tune, but now this matrix of inversions is really just focusing on 4 chords. So let's say you have something like C major 7, A7, D minor 7, G7. Now I'm going to play all of those chords on root position. That's just a simple root position, right? It's like this. I got a piano here, wait. So I'm just playing this, right? Very simple turnaround. Oh, you're welcome about the lesson. My pleasure. So what I'm going to do is play those 4 chords root position like I did, but then I'm going to do them on every inversion. So practice 1 inversion at a time. So I did a root position, now first inversion, then second inversion, and third inversion. What I do visually is I write it all down on 16 measures, right? First system is going to be root position, second system every chord on first inversion, third system every chord on second, and last system every chord on third inversion. That's going to give you 16 measures that you can look at it like this, right? So it becomes easy, it's visual. You can write it down and then just do 1 inversion at a time. So I'm gonna do it non-stop. Root, first, second, third. Right? That like each of them has its own sound. Each inversion has its own vibe, right? You can do it ascending and descending, of course. Now, the idea with the matrix is once you have 16 measures like that, and you have each inversion properly done, like you're good with it, now you start mixing them, right? But if you have them like this on your 16 measures, it's easy to read. You don't have to think about it. The idea is spend 10 minutes writing those 4 chords on every inversion, right? So now you have, if you look at the measures like this, you have all root positions, all the inversions here, like that. So you can play, let's say I play the first chord on first inversion, the second on second inversion, the third chord I played on root position. you can bounce around, but visually you can look at them and just play them, ascending and descending. So how about I start mixing them up and be like, you see, I just applied a little octave displacement there, right? So that's the evolution of the matrix. Once you have pure inversions kind of done, you can now mess around with your cells that you've been practicing. And instead of having just plain inversions, you can grab another cell, can copy and paste it, but now do sort of manipulations that you want. So then you can start sounding like this. Right? Now, again, it's only chord tones. I'm going to finish with that. You know, the next step would be to, let's replace the roots for the ninths and just get a little more spicier sound. That also should answer your question about how to make it a little more interesting. How do you make one chord a little more interesting? Matrix of Inversions, again, repetition. So Matrix of Inversions is 60 measures where you write in 4 systems. You're going to write every chord. You can decide what chords. I like to do typical progressions and cadences, 2-5-1s like I did now. You can put root position, first inversion, second and third. You play them as they are, ascending and descending, and then you mix them all up. Like you read one here, read one there, read one there, read one there, and you check out what you like. You're gonna see, you're gonna naturally have all the inversion possibilities, all the connection possibilities right there. You don't have to do more than 16 measures. The only thing you have to do is now have fun. It is fun because once you write it down, if it takes you like 10 to 15 minutes to write it down, now you grab your sax and you just read them all out. You just read it, ascending, descending, combine them in all sorts of ways, and try to see what you like. You're training your ear to actually hear the harmony, right? The next step is a matrix of inversions with manipulations, right? So now you can actually manipulate it a little bit and be like, okay, what I'm gonna do now is put the cells that I actually like, right? And start making more interesting sounds. The next step would be, let's put rhythm to that, right? The next step, let's put chromatic approach. So you can see how the matrix can evolve until it becomes a matrix of phrases, right? All right, awesome. I think, kind of out of time. So thank you so much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found it useful. Sorry I couldn't have like my share screen so you could see, actually visualize it. But if you're interested, please send me a DM. Follow me, Lorenzo Ferrero Music, on my Instagram account. Check out my instructional YouTube videos. And please feel free to also check out, I encourage you to check out my Mastering Melody course, which you can access on my Instagram. There's a link there to my course. It's literally like the evolution of what I've talked today. It takes you through more than almost 3 hours of content, and it comes with an e-booklet and everything. So you'll really get onto how to really do this. So I hope you enjoyed what I talked about, and please feel free to send me any DM with any questions that if I think I answered most of it, but if I didn't, please send me a DM to Lorenzo Ferrero Music. I'll be happily reply. Saludos a todos los hispanohablantes. Un gusto verlos acá. Y igualmente, por favor, escríbanme cualquier duda. Encantado de ayudar. Y si están interesados en alguno de mis cursos o en alguno de mis libros. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Jack. Thank you, Boston Sax. You guys are awesome. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.